Hey, welcome to SpaceX Daily, episode 45. I'm Patrick in Vancouver. Today is July 26th, 2026. Here's what's happening at SpaceX today. Starship Flight 13's intact upper stage splashdown moves the program one step closer to attempting the first tower catch of the ship on Flight 14. SpaceX announced plans to attempt catching the ship upper stage with the launch tower on Flight 14, provided post-flight data review shows no issues. The target follows Flight 13's successful upper stage splashdown in the Indian Ocean. This would mark the first try at recovering the upper stage via tower arms rather than ocean recovery. The decision hinges on heat shield performance and control data collected yesterday. Elon Musk stated the attempt will proceed unless mission data review uncovers problems. Remember, we covered Flight 13 yesterday. Today's announcement moves the reuse goal forward by confirming the catch attempt. Flight 13 provided new data on heat shield tile performance during re-entry heating. Engineers observed how the updated tile layout and attachment methods held up through peak thermal loads on the upper stage. The test highlighted specific zones where tile gaps or attachment stresses remain concerns for repeated flights. Data review will guide any tile redesign or application changes ahead of Flight 14. The observations focused on how the tiles behaved under the exact heating profile experienced by the ship. From an engineering standpoint, the planned tower catch of the ship upper stage on Flight 14 rests on a narrow window of timing, velocity, and structural margin. The ship must arrive at the tower with residual propellant low enough to limit mass yet high enough for final steering burns, while the tower arms must absorb the remaining kinetic energy without exceeding the stack's bending limits. The energy to be dissipated scales with the square of the final approach speed. Even a few meters per second difference changes the force the arms must handle by tens of percent. Reusing the tower structure instead of building new ocean recovery hardware collapses the per-flight cost of the ship, from the price of a new vehicle down toward the marginal cost of propellant and inspection. Heat shield tile performance directly governs how much margin remains for that final guidance phase. Each tile must survive peak heating while maintaining attachment integrity, so that no single gap grows into a larger thermal breach that alters the vehicle's lift-to-drag ratio. The Flight 13 test exposed attachment zones where differential expansion between tile and substrate created measurable stress concentrations. If those stresses can be reduced through revised bonding or edge sealing, the ship can carry the same tile mass on subsequent flights without added reinforcement. That reduction in mass directly improves the propellant margin available for the tower catch burns, tightening the overall cost curve. The tower catch architecture itself represents a deliberate trade between ground infrastructure investment and per-flight operations cost. Building and maintaining the mechanical arms and their load paths adds fixed capital, yet it removes the need for ocean-going recovery assets and the associated logistics chain. In raw input terms, the dominant expense shifts from fabricating an entire new ship to the electricity, propellant, and labor required for inspection and refurbishment. Closing that gap requires the ship to survive re-entry with enough precision that the final descent burns stay within the tower's capture envelope. Flight 14 will supply the first real data on whether the current control and thermal protection stack can deliver that precision at scale. The Flight 13 mission carried the latest Starlink V3 satellites and achieved upper stage recovery via Indian Ocean splashdown. The satellites represent the current generation of higher capacity hardware. The launch demonstrated continued progress on both the Starship vehicle and the Starlink constellation refresh. Payload deployment occurred as planned before the controlled re-entry sequence. Engineers will examine telemetry on thermal protection and guidance accuracy before finalizing the Flight 14 profile. The announcement came hours after the upper stage completed its soft splashdown in the Indian Ocean. Source reporting from satnews.com and Teslarati confirms the conditional tower catch target. A Falcon 9 lifted off from Vandenberg Space Force Base, carrying a batch of Starlink satellites. The mission used a previously flown booster and followed standard West Coast trajectory. This launch adds to the ongoing cadence of Falcon 9 flights supporting constellation growth. The booster performed its return to launch site or drone ship landing as planned after payload deployment. Observers on X noted the visible plume from the Vandenberg Falcon 9 launch reaching parts of Arizona under clear conditions. The sighting occurred during the booster's ascent phase and was captured in multiple time-lapse videos shared across the platform. West Coast launch watchers shared photos of the booster landing on the drone ship after the Starlink deployment. The images showed the booster's grid fins and landing legs in the expected post-flight configuration. Source coverage from Fox News documented the standard recovery sequence. Cursor Launched Router, a request-level classifier that routes coding tasks between high-performance and lower-cost models to reduce inference spend while maintaining output quality. The system evaluates each prompt at intake and selects the appropriate model without requiring user intervention. Early benchmarks shared by the company showed comparable results on standard coding suites at lower average cost per request. Users highlighted the Cursor Router release as a practical way to lower inference costs for coding workflows without quality loss. Early adopters reported measurable reductions in token spend on mixed difficulty tasks. The release focuses on prompt evaluation at intake to choose models automatically. Engineers discussed the heat shield tile attachment changes observed on Flight 13 and what they imply for tile reuse margins. Several threads compared the new attachment method to earlier flights and speculated on required adjustments for repeated use. Community members tracked the exact timing of the upper stage splashdown and compared it to prior Flight 12 data points. Timestamps from official updates were cross-referenced with independent tracking stations to refine re-entry models. Local and bipartisan resistance to new AI data centers is growing over noise, water consumption, and electricity demand. Communities in multiple states are pushing back on proposed sites even when operators offer voluntary cost protections. Resolving the tension will require either siting changes or enforceable grid impact agreements that satisfy residents and regulators. Several county-level hearings have already delayed project timelines. The pattern reflects growing pushback as AI training clusters scale. Several proposed sites have already faced formal complaints from community groups. Source material from Boing and the Register notes the cross-party local opposition. On the AI front, Elon Musk said Grok could generate a full historical film on the scale of the Odyssey movie, pointing to progress in long-context video and narrative generation. The claim centers on advances in long-form video generation and narrative coherence. No timeline or training details were provided for reaching that output level. The statement highlights ongoing work on extended context handling within the model. The comment came during a public discussion of model capabilities and did not include specific parameter counts or training schedules. It underscores the focus on extending coherent output length in current development cycles. Source reporting from MemeBurn captured the remarks on model capabilities. Trump's expanded voluntary pledge asks data center operators to shield households from rising power costs tied to AI infrastructure build-out. The expanded pledge asks data center operators to absorb power cost increases rather than pass them to residential customers. The voluntary framework targets regions with rapid AI infrastructure growth. It does not impose new mandates but signals continued political attention to grid impacts. Operators in multiple states have already signaled support for the approach. The framework remains non-binding and relies on operator commitments rather than regulatory enforcement. Industry groups have begun outlining internal cost allocation plans in response. Source coverage from the Register outlines the non-mandatory structure. Before we go, Flight 14 heat shield and control data will decide whether the tower catch profile gets locked in. That's the day at SpaceX. That's a wrap. SPCX is trading at $115.07, down 0.9%. If you're new here, subscribe and this briefing finds you every day. I'm Patrick in Vancouver. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you tomorrow. And before you go, this show is part of the NARA network, a family of daily podcasts on tech, science, and markets, each one a short, sharp briefing you can finish on the commute. If today earned its place in your feed, here's your next listen. Models and Agents, your daily briefing on AI models and agents. Find every show free at naranetwork.com. And on the website, every episode's visuals live in our free image gallery at naranetwork.com/gallery. Royalty free under Creative Commons. Download with attribution. This episode used AI voice synthesis of my voice. Editorial selection and analysis are my own.